The top of the hour, and so as many of you have heard me say throughout the evening, we want to be as respectful as possible of your time this evening. And so we are going to get kicked off with our Paying for School Webinar Wednesday offering. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We really do feel that there's a lot of important information having to do with a student's college search and their college decision process. And it is arguable that there is nothing more important than paying for school. In terms of a student finding their right fit, the school that is right for them, we want to provide all of the information that we possibly can to ensure that you're as informed as possible about how to navigate managing finances throughout your college career. So, James, if you want to hit the first slide for me real quick. For those of you who are joining us this evening, my name is Anders Groseth, and I work as the Associate Director for Recruitment in the Office of Admissions. There I am right there, and then we can circle back to that last slide, James. But my role is to connect with students and to put together opportunities just like this, to inform students and families about everything that Montana State University does to help you be the best student you can be, to develop into the best person you can be, and to make sure that your four-year college career provides you with all of the opportunities that you're looking for. So you're going to hear very little from me this evening until the end. I'm going to circle back and I'm going to host kind of a Q&A session with our panelists, but just a couple of real quick housekeeping items for you all to begin the evening. One thing that is not on this slide that we meant to put on here, but throughout the evening, we have several staff members. We have Ashley from our Office of Financial Aid. We have Charlie, who's joining us. She's one of our admissions counselors who's on the road right now. And then you have me as well. And we want to engage with you throughout the evening. We know that there's a lot of questions that come up. And so if you would all do me a solid real quick, and in the bottom right-hand corner of your screens, you have a little 3-dot icon that you can see. And in that 3-dot icon, you have the opportunity to select something called Slido. It's a polling and Q&A. And we're going to use that throughout the evening tonight. We want to answer the questions as you have them pop into your head in live time. And then we'll take some time to ask questions of our panelists towards the end of tonight's session as well. So as with all of our webinars that we host for Webinar Wednesday, we're going to have this posted on our Webinar Wednesday homepage tomorrow. And we'll send out a recording to everybody who has registered to log on with us this evening. And so at any given point, if y'all have to step away, or if there's just not an opportunity to watch the entire session this evening for any reason, know that we're recording everything and we'll be able to provide you this information at a later date that's more or most convenient for you all. So again, that Slido, that Q&A polling, if you'd all do me a solid, just so you can be a little bit familiar with it, do me a favor and everybody write in real quick. Tell us where you're joining from. Whether you're a couple blocks up the street from Montana State University or joining us from all across the country, we always love seeing where our students are joining from. And so if you have the opportunity to, go ahead and write in a note of where you're joining us from this evening. And then we'll be able to kind of see, I'm seeing Massachusetts, Washington. We're already coast to coast here. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera off. And I'm going to have the opportunity to introduce you to two phenomenal panelists, two individuals that have been wonderful campus partners to me and wonderful guiding forces for the students that come to school here at Montana State University. So James, if you want to hit that next slide for me real quick. Oh, tonight's agenda. I suppose we should cover that as well. But with the agenda that we have for this evening, we want to cover the FAFSA application. For anybody who's not familiar, FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid that can help students navigate the paths towards acquiring aid funds to help pay for school. We're going to talk a little bit about our scholarship programming that the Offices of Financial Aid and the Office of Admissions partner on to help students pay for school. And then we're going to open things up real broadly just to talk about services and resources that we have to provide that help students in that paying for school process as well. So now our panelists this evening, we have our Director of Financial Aid, James Broscheid, and he's going to kind of detail some of the FAFSA and the scholarship opportunities that we have to provide you. And then we have Keith Hamburg, who's MSU's Senior Financial Coach, and he's a representative from our Office of Financial Education. So two different things at Montana State. We have financial aid and we have financial education. And these two entities and units come together to really be a powerhouse in terms of providing opportunities opportunities for students, guidance for students, and essentially just support for students in paying for school throughout their 4 years. And so James is going to kick us off this evening. And so now you all are, for a while, done hearing from me, but I will hand it over to James, who's going to talk about some of everything that his office has to offer. So with that, James, you're up. Thanks for being here.
Hello, thank you, Anders, and good evening, everyone. Again, James from the Financial Aid Office, and Keith here with me. We'll tag team a little bit tonight in terms of giving you some information. So we're going to start with some just everything's going to be kind of high overview, kind of exactly kind of where we are. There's not a lot of really deep grain kind of detail here, but we're just going to kind of run through some of the options that are available for you and kind of what that looks like. And it kind of helps you, I think, focus on your current year of high school and kind of see where you're at and try to work on what that year looks like for you. So for in-state students, this is just kind of an overview. We're going to get a little bit more specific on the next couple slides. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one other than to kind of talk, we're going to talk about in-state, out-of-state, and what's kind of available for every student as we kind of navigate through this. So if you're a Montana resident, and I saw a few as the states were popping up there, we have what we call a Premier Scholarship. That is our main merit-based program that is based on your high school GPA. And so it ranges anywhere from $1,000 a year to $4,000 a year. You're eligible for those for up to 4 years. You have to be full-time to get that, and it applies only to your specific Montana resident tuition. You have to maintain a 2.5 GPA to continue to roll that over year to year, and you have to complete or attempt 30 credits annually. So in a 4-year award program, and that is the max, you get 8 semesters of this, you need to take at least 15 or 30 credits a year to kind of keep on pace to be eligible and to maximize really the amount of the Premier Scholarship and how it treats you towards tuition. We have a Hillman Scholars Program, and Keith has a slide on that at the end. I'm going to leave most of that detail for him as he kind of talks about that program, but that's another state program with a separate individual application. That has a small number of students that are admitted to that each year, so that is cohort driven. If you're also from the state, then Montana State University System. So in conjunction with the university system, Montana State works with their program of the Honors Scholarship, and that is an application that's due to the state, and that also applies toward tuition and how those things kind of build and kind of magnify each other. Depends on how those tuition things get together, but you want to maximize your choices again and kind of get where that is. And then for the first year, if you're eligible for the honors program, we throw in $1,000 stipend on that first year just to kind of incentivize that bonus a little bit. And then we have a first generation award for Montana students. So if you, a question on the admissions application is whether or not parents have attended college before. And if that's not the case, then you might be eligible for the MSU, what we call Treasure State Scholarship, but that's a first generation award. And for our out-of-state students, we have also a merit-based program, and we call that the Achievement Award. That ranges anywhere from $7,000 to $16,000 per year right now. Those awards come out every year, and they're specific to that aid year. And when you get that award, it is driven to those 8 years. That amount is good for you for those 4 years from the year that you start school. So that achievement award is much similar to the Premier. You have to maintain a 2.5, do the 30 credits for years. That is available for you for 4 years, renewable based on that GPA and different things like that. And then MSU also participates in the Western Undergraduate Exchange. You may hear that from some competing schools or other schools you might be looking at. What's different about Montana State's WUI Award is that it's competitive. So it is by application, and you do have to be invited into that application, and you will receive information from admissions that invite you into that application, and then you are eligible for that. That is a program that then becomes, rather than, it's a scholarship still, but it becomes a tuition assessment model. So you get charged different tuition. It's 150% of in-state tuition to be eligible for that. And your GPA on that, though, again, be contingent on what admissions draws as a cutoff line and kind of where they go with that. So be attentive really to that. We have too many students really on an annual basis that miss the invitation and didn't get to apply for it. And because it's so driven by the competitive nature of our award, there's only about 1 in 3 that actually probably end up getting the offer. So please be attentive to your emails and communications from admissions on that. For all students, what we have is an internal program at Montana State. We call it CAT scholarships. And about 90% of all the departmental or college awards are awarded through our CAT scholarship system. And so you can see the address there. It's called montana.academicworks.com. That is just a background of what that is, but it's labeled CAT scholarships. So it happens that it has a very similar annual application process to the FAFSA, which we'll talk about here more in just a minute. But that is an annual application that gets you into that process. The previous awards, Premier, Achievement, WUI, they really focus on your high school credentials to get you into those programs. CAT scholarships, a little bit different. It generally, some will use your high school information, but most will use your college experience and your college performance to be awarded for those. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't apply as a freshman. We want to get you in there. There are some freshman awards, but it is contingent on mostly on college performance and what that is. So it kicks you off right away to saying, what do I build my opportunities as I go through school in years 2, 3, and 4? CAT scholarships will really lean into that and how well you're performing in your degree and your major in terms of what that looks like. Outside scholarships, Keith will spend a little time on this too when he gets to his section, but that is kind of your own homework. That is where you find different materials and where you find different searches, where you have relationships at work or where your parents have relationships through community organizations, different things like that. They will all kind of go through that in terms of what that mentions like. So that is a lot of your own work, but those have to be reported to us as part of your aid package. So it's important that you communicate with us if you have scholarships coming in from other than Montana State and tell us what that is, because if they show up late, then we end up doing some juggling and some adjustment awards, and that is never the best thing when you think that you may have lost something because something comes in later because we didn't know about it. MSU also has a prestigious presidential scholarship award through our honors program in terms of what that looks like. That application is also embedded into our CAT scholarship portal, so you get a full amount there. That is very generous in terms of a full tuition waiver and a housing stipend for what you get with that. So it's one of our probably our most prestigious award outside of getting to WUI in terms of value. So pay attention to that in terms of being eligible for those awards as we kind of navigate that. If you get a scholarship offer, and those will start, I know probably a big question that's already looming out there is when will those go out? So if you've applied for admissions and we have your GPA and through our system that gets kind of recorded, we will start sending those out in probably about a month, hopefully a little sooner, but I'd say by about a month. And then when you get that, you're going to get an email that tells you that you have an offer. You can go into a checklist and see what that is, or you're also going to get a paper letter that will come to you that has details about the scholarship that you've been awarded, the amount, and it will come with a second page that is an acceptance where you sign off and send that back, and we'll know that your interest in taking that is all set and done there. But here's some information about how to get to that award in your checklist and how to claim or recover a net ID, which is really your access into what we have as a new portal for you, which is called My MSU. That is a portal that you're going to get really used to because everything that you do and many things that you do live in your My MSU in terms of navigating different tabs and kind of getting access to a lot of different things, but it will all be kind of centered into your My MSU account. Managing aid other than that. So one, we'd like to lean into the idea higher education is true investment in you. This has a lot to do with how you poise yourself, how you kind of get done with your program and what that is. This is, to me, it's kind of like your first job. This is how you invest in what you do. And this is how it kind of gears toward a lifetime earnings that you may get. And so college graduates still are shown through plenty of reports that they will earn more over in a lifetime. And it has a lot more portability with you in terms of transition and doing different things. So we want to thank you for the interest in higher education, and it is an investment in you. And so we want to thank you for that. Managing your aid, there are a couple different things, and we talk about cost, right? And we're talking about paying for school and what does that cost? And these are some components that kind of build into that cost. Tuition and fees, that's kind of obvious for everybody. But what's some of the other hidden costs here are some of these other things that are listed on this slide here. You have books and supplies that you pay for each semester based on the enrollment, what courses you're taking and what those are. So you have some additional costs outside of tuition and fees. So you register for classes, obviously you get charged tuition and fees, but books and supplies are outside of that a little bit. You can get those in a number of different places. bookstore, other things. Some can get to your account, some can't. So you pay sometimes to MSU and sometimes, or a lot more frequently, you might pay that to an outside entity or somebody like that who has those. Room and board or food and housing is the other big component of what that is. So you've been living at home, you've been kind of getting food and housing from mom and dad or parents or grandparents, or whoever that might be. But that is a component that we build into what it costs to go to school. You're no longer at home, so we're allowed to kind of build into your cost of attendance an amount for food and housing in terms of what that looks like. In addition to that, you still live every day like you do now. You have gas or transportation. You have just going to the store and buying some day-to-day necessities, and we call those personal expenses and transportation. So we build for you the cost that includes all of these things. Those four things don't mean that's what you owe to MSU after you register for a term. You owe tuition and fees for sure, and then if you're on campus, you owe for room and board or food and housing as that's kind of transitioned. So know that those two things there, and we're talking about that. This will be a little bit more clearly illustrated on this slide. So here's an in-state current year stuff. This is not what it will cost for next year. This is just an estimate or value of what it is this year. But we label those that previous slide into two things. One is direct expenses. That is what you actually owe MSU at the end or when you register for classes. And then we have indirect expenses. Those do not show up on your bill. That's for off-campus room and board and other personal and miscellaneous expenses that we talked about on that other. And so you get kind of a value there in terms of what that overall piece is. But again, that doesn't mean that you have that. Books and supplies vary each semester. Personal and transportation vary based on your own lifestyle and how you live and what those guys. We kind of are required when we look at food and housing and those kinds of different elements to kind of present to you what would be a Cadillac of costs. That's kind of a federal requirement for us is to communicate with you. It could cost you this much, but those things are all variable. Tuition and fees are variable upon how many classes you take and what the credits are. Full-time is full-time, and then you hit a flat spot at MSU. So it's to your advantage to take as many classes of both full-time as you can because it doesn't cost you extra tuition. And then food and housing, it will depend on the kind of dorm choice that you have in the meal plan that you choose. So there are variable pieces in that, but what you see here is kind of a median cost for what it would cost or might cost you to kind of participate in those. So that gives you an idea there. How are you eligible? How do we determine what kind of aid you're eligible for? That happens with the free application for federal student aid. Anders mentioned that right at the beginning. This is the key application that drives eligibility for financial aid. We encourage you with everything that we can. We encourage you to complete this application. It is the cornerstone of determining eligibility for federal, state, and many institutional programs. For CAT scholarships, it's not necessarily required, but it is highly encouraged again, because as you have more and more students become eligible for different programs, there needs to be some sort of criteria or spot in there where whoever is reviewing your application can see kind of what your status is and how that compares to others. So it makes a difference in all of those things, federal, state, institutional aid, as well as scholarships. So you have a hashtag here to kind of get that. The address is up there in the left-hand corner as well. That application is open. If you haven't done it yet, I encourage you to do that just as quickly as you can. We have a preferential filing date of December 1 each year, and that is just to utilize limited funding that we have in some programs. That doesn't mean you can't complete the FAFSA after the preferential filing date. We want you to do that either way. The preferential filing date is just for us to use for limited program consideration. So the FAFSA is new. So if parents are listening and you've done one in the last couple of years or several years ago, this FAFSA application is quite a bit different than it has been in the past. They went through a whole what we call simplified process a couple of years ago. It did not launch well, but it has improved over the last couple of years. So if everything's in order and you've filed taxes and those are all with the IRS, you can complete a FAFSA form in as little as 5 to 10 minutes. So the barrier of time and what that looks like is there. So please, again, this for that little bit amount of time, that little bit of investment to kind of see where you're at, that allows us to kind of determine what kind of aid that you're eligible for. And it gives you the choice to kind of decide where that goes. Here's a couple things. So with that process a couple years ago, the formula behind the scenes that kind of calculates eligibility has been updated to something else. And that was many, many years coming. It had been the same since the probably the 1960s or 70s. And so it was due for a refresh, and they kind of brought that up to date a little bit more. What you have to do here, though, before you begin the FAFSA is create an FSA ID or a student account. Really, this is just a user ID. You're all familiar with user IDs. As you get into systems, you have a user name and password, and then a password. That's what allows you to get in that system. This is the same for federal student aid. This FSA ID, though, will do more than just your FAFSA application. It will carry with you to get into the system. If you borrow loans, it'll help you see those. It'll help you track where you're at and what you've received. You'll just have all kinds of access information for that, depending on the type of aid that you use. So it is something that you're going to want to become really familiar with in terms of what that looks like. Students, once you complete your portion of the FAFSA, you need to invite most likely a parent or some other contributor into your application as a brand new freshman. So the FAFSA will ask you questions and determine whether or not that's needed, but your parents, in most cases, are more than likely need to be a contributor to the application. So they will need their own separate FSA ID or username and password, and that will do that. But once you put them as a contributor, Federal Student Aid will send them an invitation. They can then get into the application on their own and provide their own information that helps you kind of figure out what that looks like. So kind of figure out what that is. In the FAFSA, if you have filed a federal tax return, you are required to use this data exchange where the federal student aid goes right to the IRS, grabs that information, brings it back into the application. You won't see that it's there, but it'll tell you that it was successful or not in terms of that transmission. So it is a standard. If you have filed a tax return, you cannot put in that manually if it's there. Now, if you do both, it's going to still default to that kind of piece. But that is one element that has made this so much simpler, is that you don't have to turn around and dig for stuff and do that. You just access the Internal Revenue Service, and it will bring all that data right over into the application. So that is a big benefit in terms of what this new process does. Because we're embedded into a federal student system, there is a quality control instrument embedded in this. So that process is called verification. And so federal student aid, they do the selection of this. MSU does not make these selections, but they tell us who they've selected. And if you have been selected to verify some data that's on it, that can be random, or it could be based on some of the way that you answered some of the questions on there. Please don't think if you get selected or see a little paragraph in there that says you've been selected for verification that you've done something wrong. It doesn't mean that. It means it's more than anything, it's probably just a quality control selection that says your institution is required to verify that the information is accurate and know that that's there in terms of what we do. So we just need to collect a couple other things from you. If that's true, we send you a notification telling you that we need some additional documentation. If you've used that IRS data exchange, we just need probably one and maybe two forms from you to get that started. So it's not really that difficult. But on our webpage, we have a forms page. You can look there. That is where some different forms that we might need for you to submit is that. And then we have a virtual way you can download that information into our system and kind of get that done. So that doesn't happen to every student. That only happens to a short number of students, probably around 30% or so who get selected for verification. One thing you might have to do, depending on where you would look, is there is a huge amount of identity verification going on right now. So there's a lot of AI with this new generation of different things that are going on, of stolen identities or false applications or all these different things going on. So you might be asked to actually also, in addition to verification, provide some documents that just kind of prove who you are. Don't be shocked by that. That again is just a tool that we would use and tell you that we need to see some documentation of who you are. So flying pretty fast through this so we can kind of get to questions and other things that are there. But you do the FAFSA, and then we have the cost of attendance that we talked about earlier. We get the results of your application, and then we go through a process where we do some awarding internally with us. And so we're looking to first to give you free money if we can. Those are scholarship and grants. That is gift money. You don't have to pay that back. That is everything there that would just be a bonus to what you have. You might also be eligible for work study. Work study is a way and allows Montana State to have many positions available across campus that will allow us to kind of manage that and do that. But if you're interested in working, we want to see if you're eligible for work study, and that allows you to kind of do month-to-month earnings allow you to use that towards some of those personal miscellaneous expenses that we talked about. And then you're going to get offered loans in your package other than a Parent Plus loan. Parents have a choice to kind of choose on that. That is part of the package. That is going to be part of almost everyone's there. If there was enough scholarship and grant, honestly, for you to get through this without considering anything else, we would do that for you. But there isn't enough dollars to go around in those arenas. So you need to go to kind of, at least we're going to offer that to you. It is your choice to evaluate those. It's your choice to kind of evaluate whether or not that is the best thing for you or that you have other options. But know that that's there and what there are. And then if you do take loans, there will be other things for you to do complete with that. And I know Keith will touch on that too later, so I won't spend a lot of time doing that. And with that, that kind of gives that financial aid piece in a really strong nutshell. And then I'm going to turn it over to Keith, and we'll be available for questions after he's done. Thank you.
Thanks, James. See if I mic up Anders here. Get this on. Okay, I think we're good. Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Hamburg. Good evening. Thanks for having me. I am a senior financial coach in the Office of Financial Education. We are part of the Financial Aid Office. They're located in Montana Hall in the garden level, and I'm located in the Strand Union building, the sub here on campus, down in the basement next to the bowling alley. That's a picture of my office. And a lot of what you'll hear me talk about is definitely some repetition to what James has already spoke about. He's already told you about CAT scholarship. I'm just going to reiterate that the application will open up here, technically speaking, a week from this Saturday, the 1st of November. And it will, you'll see on kind of the right-hand side of the screen, the priority deadline, the preferred filing deadline is before February 1st, 26. James already mentioned the presidential scholarship. That application's due December 5th. James also mentioned that FAFSA is open. And he also mentioned that WUI application is on January 8th. One of the things I want to reiterate here, and we just got done doing a Scholarship 101 clinic for our current students. And a lot of students are like, well, why should I apply for a FAFSA if I don't want student loans or I don't think I'm going to get grants? And CAT scholarship, a big portion of getting a CAT scholarship is applying for FAFSA. So I work with clients who've never taken a student loan, but yet they continue each year to apply for FAFSA and CAT scholarship. I'm obviously not going to hit every logo that you see on the screen. These are some of the workshops that myself and my coworkers, Jen and Pam, do. Our bread and butter, and what I want you to know is that we're financial coaches and that we're here to meet with you, students, parents, figuring out how to pay for school, questions on FAFSA, scholarship searching, and then the logos you see on the screen are some things we do for current students, like salary negotiations, Scholarship 101. Again, we had that about an hour and a half ago. And then as the student gets closer to graduation, we help with loan repayment, public service loan forgiveness, and programs like that throughout your time here at MSU. And even though a lot of this is paying for school, we also talk about credit and we talk about budgeting if a student is going to move off campus and such. Again, repetition of what I just said, but one-on-one is our primary job is to coach students and parents one-on-one. I always say this anytime I talk to more than one person, and that is that finances are an individual sport. You will have in-state student with a certain premier scholarship and they get Pell Grant. You'll have an in-state student with a larger premier scholarship who doesn't get Pell Grant. So we're here. We also hire a student associate, a work study student who is a peer mentor and helps their peers with paying for school, et cetera. One thing I want you to know, I understand it's only October 22nd, but our office, the Office of Financial Education and the Office of Financial Aid, we do a Paying for School for Incoming Freshmen and Their Family webinar series. So both parents and students will be invited in March, April, May, June, July. We actually did one in August this year, where we'll go into more details of how does the parent get the bill? How do you apply your scholarships? What if you have an outside scholarship? We'll help you with those kind of things even before you come here for orientation. And as James mentioned with FAFSA, will also help you with making sure that if you're taking loans, that you've done all the steps like entrance counseling and master promissory note that you see on the screen right here. We can help you with that process along with anyone in the financial aid office. Again, because James went into CAT scholarship, one of the things I tell every one of my clients is you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket, and you cannot get an additional Premier Scholarship, Achievement Award, or WUI unless you do the CAT scholarship application, which is going to open up here on November 1st, and ideally you're going to submit it before November 1st. I said November 1st, I meant February 1st. James mentioned that there's a Hillman Scholars Program. This is for in-state students. Some will be invited. The application will go live later this spring. Even if you're not invited, you can apply to be a Hillman Scholar. Again, you have to be an in-state student, and it is a limited scholarship to 50 or so students graduating from a Montana high school. They have to be Pell Grant eligible. Some get invited to apply by the president of the university, but again, the application will be on the website. You see on the screen that this is more than just money, even though money is a big part of it. It's over a $16,000 scholarship over 4 years, et cetera. But you'll see some of the things that they do year one. Year two, they're doing an internship. Year three, it's about student engagement, and year four is about giving back to the state or the community. So it's academic and leadership program designed specifically for Montana future leaders. This is just a quick slide, and I think it's my second to last slide, or maybe my last slide, to let you know some of the cities and towns that the Hillman Scholars come from. It's anything from Two Dot, Montana, to our largest city in Montana, Billings, and in many towns in between. I see a mistake I made in here. This would be Montana residents who graduate from high school in 2026, not 2024. There is the website, montana.edu/Hillman Scholars. So you're welcome to look into that more. It has some great information on the website. So with that, obviously you see financial aid's phone number and their email. You see my office phone number, and that's the general email to my office, which I'm the one who checks those emails. So certainly if you have any questions or you want to make an appointment, you can do that. So with that, Anders, is there another slide I continue to go on, or are you just going to hop on and chat a little bit?
No, I would love to just have a chat. There's been some really good questions that whether through Slido or through the chat feature have been asked that I would like to pose to you all. And also thank you to everybody who's logged in this evening. Thank you to those of you who submitted a question ahead of time, because those are some of the kind of the specifics that folks really want to know about. For those of you who are joining, I hope that you recognize that really across the board, we do talk about some MSU specific things, but just the process of paying for school. We hope that every single one of you ends up enrolling here at Montana State, but wherever it is that you go, these financial conversations and the aspects of financing education are somewhat universal in terms of their importance. And so we hope that this is just a service for all of you. So with some of the questions to both Keith and to James that were posed ahead of time, if it's all right if I throw some of those your way. This one was asked this evening, and I think that this is a really good one. And James, your shop really has oversight with this. Can students adjust their GPA or increase their GPA over the course of their senior year in order to get a higher achievement award or a higher Premier Scholarship, depending on if they're coming from in-state or out?
Great question, Anders. And yes, that is possible. So you're reporting an initial GPA now, which is probably a 3-year GPA, but we will be asking, admissions will be asking you for a final transcript from your high school, and that GPA will get recorded, but that can be updated. And if that is an increase over what you have, you will be reconsidered for the band of the Achievement Award, yes.
Cool, perfect. For the students that are joining, we've always looked at our merit-based scholarships as sort of a two-phased motivation for you all. in terms of when you're getting a higher GPA, you're going to get a higher scholarship. And so we hope that that serves as the first motivation to really be at your very best for as long as you can be throughout your high school career, knowing that it's going to earn you good scholarship money in the long run. And then I can't remember if it was on one of the slides earlier, but for the vast majority of our merit-based scholarship, a student, in order to retain that scholarship, needs to maintain a 2.5 GPA once they're here at Montana State. That's phase 2 of your motivation. You got good grades in high school that earned you the scholarship. Continue to get good grades once you're here at Montana State, and you never have to ask for it back. We're never going to make you reapply for that award, but if you hold up your end of the deal and get good grades, then we're going to hold up our end of the deal and ensure that that scholarship money is ready and waiting for you every single semester once you come back for classes on campus. So thank you for that.
Anders, yeah, let me add in real quick on that because that's a great segue really into that. Life happens sometimes, and sometimes you may fall below that 2.5 GPA or that 30 credit limit. We do have an appeals process for that. We understand that life happens and things go with that. So if you happen to lose it, you can appeal, and there may be some conditions that come along with reinstatement, but it is a possibility to appeal that if it's lost.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. With the specifics, the intricacies of a family's FAFSA or a student's FAFSA, I guess this one in particular is family related. Does the FAFSA application take into account having more than one child in college, regardless of where they go to school, in addressing their student aid index?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. That was one of the changes that federal student aid made when they brought in the new application a couple of years ago. It no longer asks that question. So the formula does not take that into account. You can communicate with the financial aid office, and we will evaluate circumstances and see whether or not that is appropriate for us to do. It is not something that we have to do. It's not something that is considered that. We have to manipulate the file in a different way to be able to consider that. So if that is a situation you have, please just reach out to the financial aid office and we'll kind of discuss that is because the first thing we're going to do is determine if we think it would make a difference at all. So we get to do some assessment there before we make you jump through any other hoops to kind of see whether or not that's a valid thing for us to take a look at.
Okay, cool. Keith, this is a question that is a little bit more in your shop, but when a student gets to Montana State University, let's say that they've kind of, in some form or fashion, slipped through the cracks and they haven't attended any of your webinars that you host, at what point do you find it most valuable for a student to set up a meeting with one of the financial coaches on campus if they start to feel like finances are getting a little bit out of hand?
You know, Anders, I think most people will see this as an obvious answer, but the sooner the better, right? I would say that from events like this, from MSU Fridays, especially the ones we do later in the spring, that's when we're starting to see families trying to figure out how they're going to pay for school. That paying for school for incoming freshmen and their families, that leads to a ton of one-on-one appointments so you can meet with a financial coach. And of course, we can give you all what it costs for an in-state student or a WUI or an out-of-state student with an achievement award, but everyone's FAFSA is a little different. Everyone's scholarship a little different. So honestly, I think my answer to that is the sooner the better. I would say realistically, it's May, June, and July that we're seeing a lot of those, especially if you've come to orientation. You know the bill's coming out in early August, but certainly there's no time too soon to be able to say, okay, about what is this going to cost? I see the price on the website. If my student lives in this dorm versus that dorm, or the cost might not take into account their premier achievement award, we can kind of give you what I would call more of a realistic number for you, your student or your family situation.
Cool, perfect. Sarah, who's joining us this evening. Sarah, I'm going to steal your question immediately that you just wrote in because I think it's a really good one. And I'm going to expand upon it a little bit as well. Which scholarships at Montana State University can be added in addition to the WUI or achievement awards versus which has to be one or the other? And well, actually, if either of one of you wants to answer that just kind of broadly, that would be great. And then I have another follow-up.
A question both James and I probably get asked a lot, especially for out-of-state students. It'll show right on the admissions website that an achievement award and WUI are not stackable, but a CAT scholarship is stackable. Your local Kiwanis Club or your high school worthy student award is stackable on your achievement award or your WUI, or as an in-state student on your premier scholarship. So no, you'll see on the admissions website that you can't stack achievement and WUI. I know James mentioned it, but probably the hardest conversation I have is, can I still apply for WUI? And if you missed the deadline, the answer is no. So certainly that's why we're excited that you are joining us tonight, so you know about those deadlines. Anything to add there, James?
Yeah, I would only add that the cost of attendance that we talked about early in that piece, that is kind of the cap. So it's great if you have scholarships that would reach you to that cap. That would be a wonderful problem to have. But that is kind of, there is a limit, and that's that cost of attendance cap
Yeah.
for several awards. Yeah.
I'm very glad that you just mentioned that as well, because a question that we receive in our office all of the time is, are there scholarships that can be applied towards anything having to do with the cost of education other than tuition? James, you mentioned specifically in one of your initial slides that one of the big chunks of the cost of attendance is room and board. It's living on campus. Are there any sort of scholarships, be they through MSU or outside, that can be applied towards housing and books and supplies and things like that?
Yeah, actually, most of them are. You have to kind of look at who the donor is or whoever's providing that information. They will say if it's tuition specific or not.
Okay.
Those are the only ones that we kind of run into trouble with, is if the provider of those dollars says, I want it only to go towards tuition. Otherwise, from the financial aid office perspective, we apply it to the cost of attendance.
Okay, cool.
It's available. Yeah.
Perfect. With families that are navigating, especially for the first time, paying for school, and this might be somewhat unfair, but I'm going to ask you all to talk about something that is outside of your realm, but there is a key campus partner that is not a part of this session that is a big part of students and their payment processes, and that's our Office of Student Accounts. Would either of you like to take a minute to talk about the Office of Student Accounts and possibly even the payment plan process here at Montana State?
Okay. Yeah, great question, Anders. And as you said, between admissions and financial aid, we're all working together. And part of our one-on-one appointments, part of our MSU Friday, part of our orientation is talking about options of paying for school. And that the Student Accounts Office, I would say the most popular thing for some families is that you can go on a payment plan. So I work with numbers all day. So in my mind, the example is, you've got the cost of room and board, and you've got the cost of tuition, and then you add your scholarships and any grants or any financial aid you're taking, and it might leave you what we refer to as the gap. And what can you do with the gap? You can pay the gap one time. You can also pay it over 4 payments, where MSU, I'm a round numbers guy. If you owe $8,000 is your gap, you can pay $8,000, or you could pay $2,000 in August, October 1st, November 1st, December 1st, same thing in the spring, except it's January, mid-February, mid-March, mid-April. So we do offer a payment plan. There's a small fee for that. One of the things I think is positive from that perspective is the university, your student accounts, does not charge you interest to go on that payment plan. So I would say that that is probably the most popular thing. There's certainly lots of ways to pay. Credit cards, debit cards, there are fees associated with that. I pay my child's tuition via an e-check, and they don't charge me. And it's actually, I did it the first time this fall, and it was minutes to set it up. So am I headed in the right direction of what you were asking, Anders?
Yeah, according to Jennifer, who just wrote in, she asked, does the payment plan have interest in installment fees or etc.? So Jennifer, if I could, and Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I could jump in on this, there are fees that are associated, small additional fees that are associated with the payment plan, but not interest. Keith, is that correct?
Not interest. There's a $50 per semester setup fee. And if you're using a credit card or debit card, there is a fee to do that. There is no fee to pay by check, e-check, or cash.
Okay, cool, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and preemptively say that this next question might be most appropriate to be directed towards our Travis Atkins Veteran Student Support Center, but this is a part of the whole process. If a student is using post 9/11 GI educational benefits, are those benefits applied to a student's tuition? And this is real specific, and I know that, but tuition and fees after financial aid and FAFSA or before?
That would generally be before. I mean, again, we're talking about timing for a lot of this in terms of when stuff gets done, but it is part of that process. But you're right. The Travis Center for Vets would be the ones who are processing that eligibility. They're the ones that are submitting that paperwork, and then that has to get back. So there just becomes a lot of timing with is it available for the bill pay or not? Is it something that is, yeah, just really kind of depends on that availability. So early is better for everything. And so getting that done, but they submit that paperwork. Sometimes the VA takes a while to process that. We'll take that into account as we look at the bill and other aid though, when we get to that point, and just kind of try to manage it in the best way that we can.
Perfect. And
Can I
for
add
everybody,
one thing, Anders?
please do. Yeah, please do.
One of the things, just because both of our offices work a lot with veterans, obviously, James has Julie Watson handles the vet stuff. Oh, Aaron. Okay, so he's got people who handle specifically vets, but I'll work with Chapter 33, which has a tuition waiver and a stipend. I'll work with dependents using benefits of just Chapter 35, which is just the stipend. The one thing I would mention, kind of going back to student accounts, it's pretty common if a student is living on campus and they have Chapter 33, meaning their tuition's being waived and potential other grants or loans are being taken, that they will go on a payment plan so they can use the stipends to make the payments, if that makes sense. You don't have to go on the payment plan, but as they know that the stipends are coming, they're like, sure, I'm going to go on a payment plan for whatever the number is, $1,800 a month. My stipend's going to be whatever, and they're paying it and using the stipend to make the payments, if that makes sense, Anders.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stipend comes monthly.
Stipend comes.
It's not a one-time
Right,
thing. So
right, yeah.
that's the challenge there.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I just, my own personal story, the payment plan is why I got to go to college for anyone joining. So I'm a big proponent of that. Not everybody needs to use it, but it's hugely beneficial for some. So this is another one that was asked in live time this evening. And so if y'all wouldn't mind, if a student, and actually I'm interested in both the while this is happening and what MSU can do after this has happened. But if a student is filing for FAFSA as an independent, is there anything else that needs to be done in regards to timing or paperwork? And so James, that's kind of on your side of things. And then Keith, is there anything in particular that MSU has to provide in terms of support structure for students that are independents throughout their college career as well?
Generally, to kind of back in off the last part first, once you kind of establish through the questions on the FAFSA that you are independent, that should carry through for your entire college career. So that would be the one thing. As you answer some of those questions on the FAFSA that might dictate your independence, we might follow up with you to ask for some documentation that supports the question that you're asking. So that would be an email that we would send you. That would be, hey, we've got a tag for you. We'd ask you to go into your My MSU portal, see what that is, and then provide documentation to us that kind of support the question that you've checked. And is there documentation or what do you have to actually support that?
Okay.
So that supplement there, but once you get established in that mode, you should be set once that has been identified. Very rarely does that go backwards in a situation. So it does change eligibility for some because your eligibility or ability to find parental support or some other things changes. So it does make a difference, and it's an important conversation, I would say, with Keith in a lot more respects because you have some different budgetary concerns that you need to manage.
Fabulous. I want to give Charlie, our admissions counselor, a specific shout out because she texted me a question that she hoped you all would answer. Different states specifically have different educational finance programs, But one of the common ones is like a 529 plan, or a GET plan that I've heard of from different states. If families have set aside money through a specific 529, let's say, how do they go about accessing and utilizing those funds here at Montana State University?
Certainly. It's a great program for those that have used it. The relationship is with that vendor. Whoever owns that 529 plan, whoever owns that plan is who you're going to work with to get money drawn from that account and delivered to MSU. That goes directly to student accounts. And they are the ones who apply that like a payment to your tuition or to your bill. But you have to work with that vendor to make sure that what you're drawing gets here and that it gets applied to your account. It is kind of, while we're aware of it, is not really considered direct financial aid. So it is a process for a family to make payment on their account.
Okay, fabulous, fabulous. And then I'm keeping. How do we pay out of 529 accounts? Just talked about that. I suppose one of the big aspects for a lot of students, not all, but for a lot of students that I would appreciate you all spending just an extra little bit on before we wrap things up this evening. But a lot of students work on campus, and can you all talk about what Montana State does in regards to student employment and how those funds can be directed or redirected towards a student's bill?
Sure. Yeah. There are thousands of jobs across campus, right? In this last year, I think we had 2,000 students working on campus. A student can work on campus and just get paid hourly like any other employee, and that money gets paid to them twice a month. And you can use that when we go back to that budget slide, that personal miscellaneous and transportation kind of component. That is what that wage earning can do for you. That is taxable income. It's part of a W-2 at the end of the year. That can happen. We encourage employers and we encourage you through the FAFSA to see if you're eligible for employment support programs, which are our federal and state work study programs. So those allow the campus to increase the number of jobs on campus. So when an employer such as myself wants to hire a student and I only have to pay 25% of that wage, then I can probably hire 3 students instead of 1, and that doesn't hurt me as much. So I get to expand the profile for opportunities across campus because we have federal and state work study available to us. So if we didn't have that, we might not have 2,000 jobs. We might only have 1,500 because of what employers and people who hire students across campus could actually pay. So it is incentive, and it doesn't get applied directly to your bill unless you pay it out of pocket to go to your bill. Otherwise, it is your paycheck. You can do with it what you want for your own day-to-day expenses.
Awesome.
Anders, can I just add one quick thing, even though this is from James's shop?
Heck yeah.
A few years ago, we had a little lovely box that you could check on the FAFSA saying, I would like to be considered for work study. Under the new FAFSA, that went away. So we'll tell you if you come to Montana State at orientation, when James or I or Barb and I, the Associate Director in Financial Aid, we do this, that you have to apply for FAFSA to get work study. But now, instead of that box that some reason they took the box away, you just ask your financial aid if you qualify for work study. And as James mentioned, even in our office, we have 1 student associate. If they weren't work study, we could not hire them. So does everyone qualify for work study? No, it's a need-based program, but certainly worth applying for FAFSA to see if that opportunity is in there.
And I'll throw to it. You don't have to have work study to work on campus. There are plenty of jobs on campus that still pay hourly, that make that available. Work study increases the opportunities across campus to be able to work. So if you don't have work study or aren't eligible for work study, that doesn't mean you can't work. Actually, working 10, 15 hours a week has proven to be a very successful time management piece, separates you from your academics a little bit. So we'd like to see you work a little bit one way or the other.
Yep, absolutely, and I can speak to that as well. When I first started here at Montana State, I didn't have a strong academic background when I left high school, so my folks didn't want me to work my first semester. From then on, I worked, and if you look at the semesters that I worked on campus, those are the semesters that I got my best GPA. There's all sorts of studies that have been done that the GPA and the number of hours worked are positively correlated until you're knocking on the door of that 20 hours per week. And so MSU, in regards to students on campus employment, we limit you to 20 hours per week. We know that the primary focus is your education, but we do want to support that financial aspect as well.
Yeah,
So
working on campus, you'll find flexible employers where you might not find that off campus.
yep, absolutely. So well, shoot, gang. Well, we have taken almost an hour of everybody's time this evening, and we've done our best to help answer questions in live time and in this live Q&A here at the end. But we know that questions are going to come up as well. And so you please do, if you haven't already, take a screen grab, take a picture of the contact information that's there on the screen to follow up with James and Keith and their teams, wonderful teams that are in the offices of financial aid and financial education that are here to go to bat for you. And the other piece of the puzzle for tonight is my office, the Office of Admissions. We want to help however we can. And sometimes it's no more than helping redirect a question to the true professionals, but that's what we're happy to do. And so whether you call us at 406-994-2452 or shoot us an email at admissions@montana.edu, we are going to be here to help you out through every single step of the process. So we will be sure to send out a recording to everybody who's registered for this evening. But I'm going to wrap this up same way as I started it. Just a genuine thank you to each and every one of you for joining us this evening. We hope that this was useful information for MSU or beyond. But do keep in touch. Let us know how we can help. And we'll look forward to seeing you and crossing paths sometime down the line. So appreciate your time. And as always, go Cats.